Kenneth Hagin, often regarded as the father of the Word of Faith movement, played a pivotal role in shaping modern charismatic Christianity into what it is today. Born in 1917 in McKinney, Texas, Hagin's early life was marked by severe health challenges. Hagin claimed that at age 15, he was miraculously healed from a deformed heart and incurable blood disease after a life-changing encounter with the Bible, which he believed taught him about the power of faith and healing. In the early 1970s, Hagin began to gain prominence for his teachings on faith, healing, and prosperity. He founded the Rhema Bible Training College in 1974 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which became a central hub for disseminating his teachings. Hagin's doctrine, which came to be called the Word of Faith, emphasized the power of positive confession, the belief that spoken words have the power to influence one's reality, and that faith can lead to material prosperity and physical healing. Hagin's books, such as The Believer's Authority and Redeemed from Poverty, Sickness, and Death, sold millions of copies worldwide. His radio program, Faith Seminar of the Air, and later television broadcasts expanded his reach even further. Hagin's teachings have influenced a multitude of well-known ministers, including Kenneth Copeland, Frederick Price, and Joel Osteen. Rhema Bible Training College, which has trained thousands of ministers globally, continues to spread Hagin's word of faith through the ongoing ministries of those he influenced. His impact on the charismatic Christian movement is profound, with millions embracing his teachings on faith, prosperity, and divine healing. His prophetic utterances are often repeated among his faithful, as examples of what they claim to be God speaking through Hagin to the church of the end times. But was this really God speaking? Did Hagin truly have a spiritual gift, one that revealed to him the word of faith? Or did Hagin simply claim the works of others as his own for financial gain? To find out, we must first examine the history of E.W. Kenyon, which many scholars believe to have been the source of Hagin's doctrine. Esek William Kenyon, born in 1867, was a significant yet controversial figure in Christian theology, whose works laid the foundation for what would later become the Word of Faith movement. Kenyon's theological journey was heavily influenced by his time at the Emerson College of Oratory in Boston, a hub for new thought and metaphysical teachings in the late 19th century. This exposure deeply shaped his theological outlook, blending Christian doctrine with metaphysical concepts. Kenyon's teachings emphasized the power of words, the authority of the believer, and the idea that faith could influence physical and material realities. His writings extensively covered these themes, advocating for what he termed as revelation knowledge over sense knowledge. He argued that true spiritual understanding came directly from divine revelation, bypassing human senses and reasoning. One of Kenyon's most influential works is The Two Kinds of Life, which discusses the dichotomy between natural human existence and the superior spiritual life available to believers. Another key work, The Two Kinds of Faith, explores the difference between natural human faith and supernatural faith imparted by God. In The Hidden Man, an unveiling of the subconscious mind, Kenyon delves into the metaphysical aspects of Christianity, asserting that the subconscious mind plays a crucial role in spiritual development and manifestation of faith, often rebuking the metaphysical cults in the same breath. Scholars believe that Hagin extensively borrowed from Kenyon's works. Hagin's teachings on positive confession, divine healing, and material prosperity closely mirror Kenyon's doctrines. For instance, Kenyon's assertion that faith-filled words can dominate the law of sin and death is directly reflected in Hagin's teachings that believers can, quote, always receive whatever he wants from me or from God the Father. Hagin's book, Redeemed from Poverty, Sickness, and Death, echoes Kenyon's ideas almost verbatim, underscoring the extent of his influence. However, Kenyon was not the only religious leader with such theology, and when he died in 1948, the door was opened for the spread of Kenyon's works and those of other religious leaders with shared influences. As his theology spread throughout the early 20th century, it laid the groundwork for what would become the Word of Faith movement, which later had a more direct connection to Kenneth Hagin. The year of his death, 1948, marked the beginning of the Latter Rain movement, a controversial movement that was deemed heretical by some denominations and banned for its dangerous theology. Key figures in Latter Rain were inspired by Kenyon, and the movement heavily influenced several individuals who worked directly with Kenneth Hagin. The Latter Rain movement, which began in 1948, marked a significant shift within Pentecostal Christianity, emphasizing a return to apostolic signs and wonders, spiritual gifts, and a more dynamic experience of the Holy Spirit. This movement sought to rekindle the excitement in Pentecostalism by claiming to have revived the miraculous experiences of the early church, advocating for a new outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Two key figures in Pentecostal history were largely responsible for inspiring the movement. The first was Franklin Hall, whose book, Atomic Power with God Through Fasting and Prayer, was believed to be a catalyst for the Latter Rain revival that sparked the movement. The other catalyst was the unusual doctrine and ministry of Indiana minister William Branham. William Branham's ministry began in the late 1920s, and by the time of Kenyon's death, Branham had gained significant fame as a faith healer. He was mentored by and toured with Reverend Roy Davis, a leader of multiple white supremacy groups who also held revivals as a faith healer. This connection is critical to understand in relation to the word of faith. Davis, who was involved with and connected to ranking members of multiple Masonic orders, held healing revivals while claiming to be a converted spiritualist. In fact, such a revival was held in Branham's hometown of Jeffersonville shortly after Branham began working with Davis. Branham, and most likely Davis, also visited Indiana's nationally recognized spiritualist camp, Camp Chesterfield. It should come as no surprise that, like Kenyon, Branham also incorporated metaphysics and verbal commands into his early revivals. Interestingly, Branham and his family had direct connections to organized crime during the Prohibition era, as did Kenneth Hagin. Branham and his father produced illicit whiskey for liquor tycoon Otto Warthin and, ultimately, for Al Capone in Chicago. Hagin's brother, George, worked for Al Capone in Chicago from the age of 18. Another connection of great importance was that of faith healer F.F. Bosworth. Bosworth, who had been a ranking member of John Alexander Dowie's Cult of Personality in Zion, Illinois, further mentored Branham in the revivals, incorporating much of Dowie's doctrine into the foundation from which Branham would develop his ideas. Dowie was an early prototype for many of the doctrines that would develop in the Latter Rain and subsequent movements, including the doctrine of positive confession, which would form the basis for Word of Faith. Bosworth was a student of the works of E.W. Kenyon and carried Kenyon's work forward into the Latter Rain movement after Kenyon died in 1948. In his book, Christ the Healer, Bosworth declared that he borrowed heavily from the works of Kenyon, listing 9 of Kenyon's published works as sources. Christ the Healer became a foundational text for the Latter Rain movement, as well as the healing and deliverance movements that followed. At the height of the Latter Rain movement, Bosworth, Branham, and Gordon Lindsay, Branham's campaign manager, made many additional connections that would strongly influence Hagin and the Word of Faith. Both Branham and Hagin were members of the Full Gospel Business Men's Fellowship International, led by Demas Shakarian. Branham worked closely with Word of Faith leaders Oral Roberts and Tommy Osborne, who edited the Voice of Healing magazine published by Branham and Lindsay. Branham toured with Ern Baxter, one of the founders of the shepherding movement. It is notable that Baxter admitted that Kenyon had spoken positively of Mary Baker Eddy's Key to the Scriptures, claiming that a lot could be learned from the mother of Christian Science. After William Branham died in 1965, it would appear that the torch lit by E.W. Kenyon and John Alexander Dowie was passed to others. Osborne openly declared at Branham's memorial service that Branham was God in human flesh, a strong indication that Osborne was a member of a Branham deity cult that had developed within the movement and that still exists today. Hagin began sharing the views of Kenyon and Dowie that Bosworth helped package as Branham's theology in the Word of Faith magazine, and later founded Rhema Bible College to educate others in one of Branham's central themes, which Branham called the spoken word.